The Oasis show is officially back on the road. George, you were there at Cardiff on the weekend and your piece had quite the headline on it. So tell us, how was the gig and what was the thinking behind that quite provocative statement?
So the gig was wonderful. I think all Oasis shows, and I first saw them at Wembley Stadium in 2000. Famously,
the first night or the second night?
The second night, the infamously shambolic.
Yeah, yeah. In the fandom, this is like, you know, beyond notorious, infamous. Yeah. You know, like a day that will live in infamy.
Well, what happened?
Sort of Pearl Harbor-esque, I would say.
Liam was 3 sheets to the wind, I think you could say, and proceeded to deliver various monologues on his divorce, taking pot shots at his brother. Noel looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him up.
So I take it that didn't happen this time?
No, that didn't happen. Liam sounded great. It was a brilliant set list, 23 songs, all of the sort of national anthems you'd expect, but 5 B-sides as well. Played lots of my favourites, The Master Plan, Cast and Shadow. So, I went away happy. The crowd loved it. Job done.
But there was something interesting on the stage, which you pointed out in your piece, that you think not many people noticed.
Yes, so it was an Ergo Bra flag. Translated
that was close enough.
Ireland Forever. And that it was a reminder of something I read a bit about before, which is that the Gallagher brothers see themselves fundamentally as Irish rather than English. They, like the other original members from Irish Catholic families, would often spend time in Ireland over the summer and feel a spiritual connection with it. And Noel's talked about how the Rebel songs he had played in clubs in Manchester informed Oasis's punch in the air style, and how he doesn't support the England football team. He's very associated with Man City, would often be asked by football pundits, so how are you feeling about England in the World Cup? And he'd just respond, I'm Irish, don't care.
So there's this interesting thing that's going on with them, which is this Anglo-Irish cultural exchange. They're born to a mother from Mayo, who was part of that 1960s wave of immigration to Manchester. And so there's this profusion of semi-rural sectarian Irish sensibilities and kind of Mancunian social housing estate subcultures, but their aesthetics are very English. You talk about this before, the kind of the Umbro, the parkas, the northern accents.
I don't know. I mean, because I'm a big fan, and I can't really take any ownership over the sort of Irish element. And at the risk of sounding highfalutin, it was always the kind of romanticism of lyrics.
Nick was very helpful to remind us all in the editorial meeting earlier that he was not from Ireland, as you couldn't tell
Ireland.
by the accent.
I'm not from Ireland. I don't really know why I'm here, but I am here. And but yeah, like I always thought it was kind of like this like message of like sort of optimism and romanticism in the music and the lyrics and the kind of uplift. But even that, George and I were talking about this earlier. There's a good documentary that George Martin, the legendary Beatles producer, did. Which Noel appeared on, where he's sort of talking about, he's talking about Wonderwall, I think mainly, but he's talking about his songwriting in general. And even that, the kind of like the hopefulness in the music and so on, he ascribes to his like Irish heritage, and he talks about like, Irish folk music, which is like very plaintive and sad, and yet always has this kind of like sweet, if mournful quality to it. So, even the things I thought I liked about them, I didn't really know were Irish at all, I think.
Right. Faye, you're from quite near where their mother's from. I mean, in terms of, Ireland's not that big. Yeah, same coast, same direction. Yeah. Do you feel there's something particularly like west of Ireland about them, or is it kind of just more broad? This general ambient hibernianism.
Yeah, it's funny, I wouldn't really associate them with the west of Ireland that heavily, which is strange because usually we claim pretty much anybody we can.
Yeah, of course.
But to me, they do represent kind of English culture, unfortunately, even though I hate to say that. I really do. I wish I felt more that they had the more Irish kind of, maybe, I suppose, their directness or their kind of willingness to kind of be a bit rude on stage, or maybe drink a bit too much or say things that are a bit off colour. But I wouldn't necessarily associate them with the people that I know from the West of Ireland.
Those are things that bring us together.
Yeah, that's the great Anglo-Irish relationship.
Divide.
Yeah. The counterpoint that often gets made is of course one of the most famous images of Noel Gallagher is him playing his Union Jack guitar at Main Road in 96. I mean, he's fairly dismissive of that. And that he says he only played it a couple of times, was given to him as a birthday present. And really, I think he sees it as a mod sort of pop arts gesture. I think there were a lot of people who, because of that image, think that Oasis were far more immersed in Britpop than they were. they were happy, I think, to ride that wave for commercial purposes. But Britpop actually predates them. I think the real Britpop, it was early Blur, it was Suede. You had, I think it was the front of Melody Maker. Headline was Yanks Go Home. And it was this reassertion of British music culture against US-led grunge, Nirvana and Pearl Jam. And I think Oasis sort of stood apart actually from that. And I do think one of the reasons is that sort of Irishness, which gave them a sense of being outsiders in a way that, say, the more southern bands weren't.
Right. Yeah. And I think there's something that you've hit on there really correctly, which is this kind of like Anglo-Irish conversation, is that often, they're writing from England, but often the people who write the best about Ireland are doing it from outside. It's that slightly outsider perspective that, W.B. Yeats wrote about, the purple glow of Innisfree from Chiswick. And Edna O'Brien satirised the Catholic establishment from London as well. Waiting for Godot was originally written in French, en attendant Godot, I believe. So there's something about removing yourself from your nation that maybe allows you to ventriloquize it better.
Mm. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Noel's always... I don't know if he's ever he when he talks about like the origins of like the kind of message of his music, if you want to call it that. I don't know, George, you'll know about this, but he talks a lot about acid house, doesn't he? And sort of like the kind of collectivism, sort of like druggy collectivism of like the hacienda. And he says that like, and this is something you can, a close reading of Oasis lyrics doesn't take you very far, but it will take you here, which is that there's a lot of the first person plural, is that what we is? There's a lot of we. And I often becomes we over the course of a song. So like in Live Forever, you kind of gradually, you have the sense of sort of one person, then two people, and by the chorus, it's we see things they'll never see. And it's this kind of like...
Dare I say that's ever so slightly Taylor Swiftian? Well, I think they came before her, though.
Yeah. I think it's, one of the connections ever been made before ever. But I didn't know that Taylor Swift was a. Is she an Oasis fan? I don't even know.
I don't know.
It's unrecorded.
Yeah, I mean, you're completely right. It's that communal joy.
Yeah,
and it reminds me the first words Liam spoke when he walked on stage in Cardiff were "beautiful people," which really does sort of hark back to the sort of acid house scene that they went to the hacienda, and it's being at one with their audience. I think that's a huge thing for Oasis. It's interesting. They've never been a big festival band. Every time they've played at Glastonbury, I think it's either been one of the more forgettable Oasis shows, or, in the case of their 2004 performance, one of the worst. And I think they are just that one with their crowd. It doesn't quite translate in the same way if you put them in a sort of festival setting. They and their sort of crowd, I feel, just stand apart from everything else.
Why do you think they don't translate in a festival? Because I was at Glastonbury last week, and I had this like overwhelming sense that these kind of single pop stars were not translating in the way that actually you just want big guitar music, and they're just almost definitionally big guitar music, aren't they?
I think it's because they always like to see everything on their own terms.
Okay.
And I mean, maybe this time, Emily Evis was actually in the crowd in Cardiff, so scouting for Glasgow 27. This incarnation of Oasis, very disciplined, very focused. You've never seen Liam look that professional. Maybe to use a word you wouldn't expect. Perhaps it would translate better at Glastonbury, because it is giving the people what they want and free of the more soap opera, unpredictable, wild elements of earlier Oasis.
Do we think that they'll keep it together for long enough to finish the tour?
They have a strong monetary incentive to do so. I don't think they're getting paid till it's finished. But I also think there's genuine affection and warmth between the brothers. I don't think you can fake. It's been rapturously received by the critics and the fans. So yeah, I think they'll make it.